The following is a fan-based discussion. All properties discussed are property of Toei Inc., Bandai, Saban Entertainment, and Subaraya Productions.
Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Tokutalk.
Tokutalk. Now, it's just me and you this time. It might be only constant.
It is your apartment, so I would hope so.
It's true. Yeah, okay.
One
day I'll just walk in and you two will be here.
Our work schedules have been kind of hectic lately, so that's why we haven't done things like the Toku pitch that we've been planning for so long.
But yeah. So this one got suggested this past week. Talking about executive meddling in various tokusatsu. This time we're mostly just going to be focusing on 4.
Like Suicide Squad. We need more comedy. I didn't think of that at brunch earlier. Anyway, so pretty much at any point where the producers or Toei in general, Bandai kind of intervene into a show to change how it was originally thought up.
And supposed to be.
Usually, more often than not, making it worse.
It's true. And we're going to start off with
You want to start chronologically?
Yeah.
One of our favorite Sentai.
Shoujo Sentai Liveman.
Like, this was what, second on our list?
Yeah.
A top 10
As I said,
Sentai?
we still really like this show.
But
around the time that Black and Green got introduced, and the reason they got introduced because they were not originally planned.
Nope.
They ended up bringing in these 2 characters because the show...
because toy sales.
Yeah, it wasn't selling as well as they wanted it to. So they brought in these 2 characters, the 2 mechs,
rushed,
and Combiner. I really don't know exactly how those toys worked.
Because they weren't designed and...
Yeah, they weren't originally designed, to combine with live robots. So I wonder if they ended up having to re-release the toy itself with, like, connector pieces so the actual thing...
Entirely possible.
Yeah. I really wonder if they did that. I feel like that would be interesting just to,
and stupid.
Have that toy. But, as we all know, when you end up introducing a character too late and they weren't originally supposed to be in there, they end up coming in very awkwardly, just like Black and Green, because... they were originally the younger brothers of the 2 characters that got killed at the beginning. But we met...
Vega Baby.
No, we met one of the...
Put in the comments.
We met one of the younger brothers really early in the show. They helped them build that car.
Yeah.
And these 2 characters never got introduced. Do you think they would have done a little bit better with that? Like, I understand they gave them some sort of motivation, but at the same time, you sort of screw yourself up with your own continuity with having this character already. It's interesting exactly how that one ended up.
And out of the 3 main ones we're talking about, this I think is the less severe of the 3. It didn't really change that much of the show as far as we know. It just introduced more characters to.
And then at the same time, those characters didn't really do much. So it was the lesser of 3 evils in this case. Next, I believe, is one of our least favorite Sentai, which I can't wait. We should do that list at some point. Bottom 10 Super Sentai. Or bottom 5, whichever.
Ohranger.
Ohranger. Now, this...
has a legitimate reason. Ish. Because I understand... Like, you understand why they did it, but at that point...
It's such a jarring, like, juxtaposition between what we just had and what we get. Because you gotta remember, the first 8 episodes of this show is just like, that's great. The first 8 episodes are so good.
It set this tone of we're gonna have a darker Sentai than something much like Changed Man or Liveman.
Or Jetman.
And then the unfortunate terrorist attack in Japan happened.
And then the earthquake happened.
And so the writers and Toei and all the producers say a darker tone show, it's not the time for a darker tone show. Which we get that.
This is also sort of exactly how we got Forze as well. Because they just had the earthquake.
If you're going to change the tone of a show that drastically...
You got to keep it consistent. And
it's got to be a slower transition than what we got.
Yeah, because they're just like, episode 9 happened and you're just like, wow, I hate Yellow now. And because it's just like her character was just pointless in that episode and just terrible. And
it was disorienting.
It's just like, what is happening?
Like, it was disorienting, to say the least. And again, we get why they did it.
Yeah, we do.
We do. And here in America, we had a very similar thing. The original Spider-Man movie, the first trailer for it, had a scene where Spider-Man looks at the two towers. Then 9/11 happened. They had to re-release the trailer with that part cut out because it was reflected in his eye. We get that. We don't be reminded or they needed something uplifting. But there are two problems that I personally have with that. One, the original writers of the show had a vision. You should respect that.
We will talk about that in a second.
Yes, we will. That's my thing, because I'm not the biggest fan of political correctness. I understand that people's feelings can be hurt.
And we understand exactly where they were, like we said, we understand exactly where they were coming from.
It was a tragedy.
But it's just like, it's the weirdest thing just because of where they decided to take the show.
It's also not something we really expect from Japan.
Yeah.
Like, in America, we expect that because kid shows are much more... Kid shows?
Kid shows?
Yeah. But this is also this is the mid-90s. We are not really familiar with Japanese culture and how they are with, like, what children can and cannot watch, stuff like that. We will get to that as well in a minute. But we just don't agree with it. We don't agree with it changing it that drastically, that quickly.
Because of the fact that we knew what Ohranger could have been. It was a lot of coulda, shoulda, woulda, but at the same time, it was just like, you fucked up with how you ended up transforming your show from what it was, and you just keep bouncing back and forth between tone and everything. It hurt that show quite a bit. Yeah, we know the toy sales were really, really good for that show, but it's just like, what is happening with this plot? Nothing. Now, let's go ahead and get on to the biggest issue on this list.
I wouldn't say, the biggest issue, I wouldn't say it's the biggest, but it's the most infuriating for why it happened, and that is Kamen Rider Hibiki. 30 episodes out of how many?
50? 49?
You're 2/3 into a show, and the tone of I wouldn't say darker, but not... It's not dark, but it ain't bright either.
Yeah.
It's very serious, a very serious tone.
Yeah.
Not a darker tone, but a very serious tone. You have an adult Kamen Rider who's being a father figure to this child, and so you set a tone right there. And then after episode 30, was it 30 or 32?
30.
30.
You end up getting rid of the opening. You actually add, like, actual music into the opening.
You mean lyrics?
Yeah, like, the opening before episode 30.
And we had a very long conversation about this in our top 10 or bottom 10 worst Kamen Rider openings, because I'm pretty sure Hibiki's second opening made that list, because it was insulting.
I love the first opening.
Yeah, listen to that. It's in one of our first top 10s, actually.
Yeah.
But because it was perfect. It was perfect the way it was. No, all instrumental, no lyrics, because it matched the show.
The tone was perfect. And then we end up getting, after episode 30, it was just like, because, the Hibiki Riders were based on Oni. And they had this thing...
if you're not familiar with, are Japanese demons. Or people who are just watching this and aren't familiar with what Oni are. They are Japanese demons.
Yeah, and then you end up getting... Because they had, like, this thing where they could open their mouths.
And fire would come out.
And then the parents were like, this is scaring our kids. And I'm sitting here like, how? That's just an ability that they have. And I think
they don't use very often.
Yeah, I think they used it, like, once or twice. And then they were just like, that got cut out. And then after episode 30, Toei came in because of complaints, basically from their...
Housewives.
Yeah, basically from housewives.
Why are they watching this show?
Because the main writer...
Yep, he was attractive.
He was attractive. He was an older man, and just like, yes, that was what the housewives wanted. They were still getting pretty good, ratings on that. But at the same time, they were just like, this is scaring our kids. So what did they do? They basically fucked up the entire writing process, kicked out the writer, brought in a previous writer, the guy who wrote, I believe it was Agito. And you can see that because people like to get thrown into the water a lot when he writes things.
Also, a weird transition where every fight in Hibiki was in the woods.
That was like the best. I loved that because
it wasn't the same 3 locations we're used with.
The quarry, that one part of the city, and that other part of the city.
And so it was all woods and like riversides. And
it was beautiful.
And then all of a sudden, after episode 30, we're back in the city, ladies and gentlemen. Fuck.
The monsters got changed. I remember...
Apparently magic guitar strings can break. That, I shit you not, that was the episode that broke him in college.
Yeah.
Because at one point he does the whole flip to stab in the back and strum on the guitar. He flipped and dropped it at one point. He was like, oh my god. And he flipped, got it done, and then a string broke. He broke.
I stopped.
He done.
I stopped at that point. I couldn't watch it anymore. It was just like, it felt like it was legitimately spitting on what it was. And that bothered the hell out of me because I loved Hibiki up until that point. It was so good. I love the movie.
Hibiki is one of those shows I want to retry because the first episode...
Ohio. Then we end up getting that entire part. And, then we end up getting his... they built up his ultimate form prior to that, which is always a good thing.
Weren't both of his power forms just a paint job?
No, the first one was. The second one was just like actual armor and everything. And as I said, this is just a thing that's me. It's always good to have build up leading up to something. And they did that really well in Hibiki, which is like there was a lot of training behind it, behind both power-ups to actually get to that point. And I loved that. I thought that was great.
Also, one of the only Kamen Riders to this day who it doesn't use a belt to transform. He uses a tuning fork. Which is really cool.
And then after episode 30, they introduced the one character. The guy who played Xeranos in Dino was in this show, and he's fucking awful. I hated him. He was just like an antagonist to, the kid who we were following around. And he just wasn't that good. He just was really, really annoying. It didn't work.
Also, CD animals, which were really cool.
Yeah, I loved like all of the things about Hibiki episode 30. That's this show. These are things I love about this show. And then it's just like you had a whole bunch of executive meddling, new writers came in. In the very last episode when they were filming the fight scene, they came in with a new script halfway through.
That, and I can say this as an actor, that's fucking irritating.
That's not irritating, that's infuriating. When you end up having, after the fact, after the show was done, with the two main people who were playing the main villains, they were just like, this was not the writer's, path that we were going on. They came in and just screwed everything over for everyone.
And this goes back to what I was saying before. The writers who originally wrote this had a vision, and you should be respecting that. And because it's their artistic vision. You literally took it away from them and turned it into something disgusting.
I was so disappointed with everything after episode 30 of Hibiki, 30, 31, 32, whatever episodes. It's just like, why? It became why the series. Legitimately, why the series at that point. It's just like they introduced the characters who were pointless. There were just so many things that went wrong at that point. And I hated it. And we still have one last show to talk about, Go Busters.
Which overall we enjoyed.
Yeah.
It's not great. It's not terrible.
But you could tell exactly when they did basically the same thing. It wasn't selling as well. And that's also the reason why they didn't bring it over as Power Rangers.
That because also dinosaurs would sell well. Yeah. Would sell more than spies. But anyway. Also, I have a feeling it had something to do with the leather suits. I have a feeling it had.
I don't think so. It was just like they didn't have a gimmick. They had no gimmick, so there was no Ranger keys, especially coming right off of Gokaiger. They had no Ranger keys. They didn't have cards. They didn't have batteries that they would end up having in Kyoryuger.
It was
the spin dish of Shinkenger.
But that's also one of the reasons why I enjoyed it so much because it was simple.
It's so different. It's a much
except for its mechs, which were awful.
Well, Ace, but
I'm sorry. I hate any Sentai where the Red by himself can be a Zord and everybody else is just kind of armor. It's just not. It's not too much. Not enough teamwork.
Yeah, but Go Busters was a much more back to basics show, and then you can tell exactly when it happens because they changed the opening. Gavin, they ended up having those 2 episodes for Gavin, which were not good.
No.
Yeah, it's just such a weird transition period for that show. It doesn't really end up working.
It felt so militaristic for the first half because you knew these were spec ops. That was their title.
They have a plot. Their family had been taken or killed, and then episode 30, that plot line is getting resolved, and then you just end up having to beat enter. And I'm just like, it takes away that level of personal feeling towards his actual show.
But there were still good moments in the second half when Red found out he had one of the.
Oh my god, that was great.
When Dark Red Buster? No, Dark Red Buster. But when Red found out he had Enter's backup card inside of him and was, as far as we can tell, contemplating suicide to get rid of it.
No, that's exactly what was happening.
And Enter said, "I'm not going to kill you. I'm going to put you in a coma so you don't pull the shit again." That shit was amazing. Even after episode 30, watch our fucking top 5 fight scenes. Every fight scene in Go Buster was still awesome.
It's just the thing, it wasn't nearly as bad as what they did with Hibiki. but you could tell where a tonal changes are happening. Like Tatsugami Lyo was a thing that came in to actually make themselves another toy.
This felt like less like Hibiki, and what happened with Hibiki more like happened with Liveman.
Yeah, because it wasn't nearly as bad, but it's still a thing that's obvious, and that's where the problem is. I really, really hope they don't end up doing anything like that again, because X-Aid, we're not going to do a Tokutalk about X-Aid where we like it so far. One, because they're not caught up, and two, we're not going to talk about it until the review.
I watched way too much shit to be keeping up with X-Aid at this point. I'm keeping up with Ohranger as much as I can.
But it's just like...
Also, to explain... Sorry, people were... in comments of an earlier... we were talking about Orange... When I was talking about Orange. The reason and I feel like it's been long enough, I don't have to worry about spoilers. The reason why I think he turned into a bitch is not because he got betrayed by the... but because he became suicidal because of it and got Champ killed. That's why he became a bitch. Put it in quotation marks all you give a shit, but that's why I think he's a bitch.
But yeah, it's just like...
He's a quitter.
With GoBugs, it just wasn't nearly as bad. And I'm really happy that with X-Aid, they're keeping... It's one guy writing the entire show, and he wrote the movie. So that's why the movie was so good, by the way. Heisei Generation was a really good movie. Even with Ghost. I thought he was actually not bad in that movie.
Oh, which movie was this?
The Heisei Generations movie.
The Pac-Man one?
Yeah.
Haven't seen it yet.
It was good.
Damn.
I liked it.
With a villain like Pac-Man, you don't expect it to be good.
Yeah, it was actually...
You should give me that
movie.
file at some point.
I will. But yeah, it's just like, that was just a really good movie, and I really liked where they went with that. And, you know, it's really good when you end up having one writer that doesn't end up getting screwed over like they did in Hibiki. The fact that we're end up having just one main writer for basically every single episode in X8 outside of like a few, but even still, those like guest writers are coming in and still keeping exactly on the tone that the main writer has. And that helps so much. Having consistency in these shows is what keeps screwing them over. It's like Liveman is not that bad, GoBuster's not that bad, but Ohranger, Hibiki are just like the big standouts because they fucked them over so badly.
And I really hope this doesn't happen to Ohranger because I like where Ohranger is so far.
I think they also did with Kabuto.
To be fair, Kabuto kind of needed a tone change because there was a lack of plot.
That's true.
Moving on.
But yeah.
Ohranger, despite some of its shortcomings, is turning out to be one of my favorites.
And we're just hoping that it's not going to happen with that. That's all we're hoping for.
Because at this point, we know it's probably not going to happen with X8. It's way too late in the show for them to back out. And
it's also too good of a show, and people really like it until he sees that, and it's selling well. So
Ohranger is still in that awkward position where it can...
It's still too early.
Yeah. But I really like where it's going so far.
Yeah, I really, really hope that Toei and Bandai and the parents
respect that this is not just a show for their kids to watch. This is somebody's livelihood who worked very hard to write that script and has an idea in their head, and they should respect that. Yeah. I understand if it scares your children, make them watch something else. Just don't take away somebody's job because of that. It's not. It's your job as a parent not to complain and get somebody else fired, but to keep your kids.
Because you want something to change. Just like just learn what to watch.
And that's an issue that we have here on the West End as well in America, because the FCC is, I think, the devil. But
good thing they don't do anything internet content. That's how we stay out. But yeah,
seriously, if the FCC ever got on YouTube, we are fucked.
Yeah, we're screwed.
We are super fucked.
But yeah. This is a good one. I feel like this is something that really ends up having to be said, especially because when we end up getting to Hibiki, I'm going to have the biggest boner for the first 30 episodes, and then I'm going to go so soft it's just going to go up inside me after their episode 31. So, there's that.
That's a mental image I really did not need. Thanks.
But yeah.
Give this video a like if that is a mental image that you will never get rid of and you hate Marcus for it.
But yeah, let us know exactly what you think of, basically these 4 shows in the comments, and, what you think of the Meddling.
If another show that we may not be thinking of that this happened to in Tokusatsu.
Yeah. There's always a possibility, go ahead, like our Facebook page, comment on our Facebook page. I'm trying to make more posts on there. I did one last night.
I try to keep up with Twitter as much as I can, but
yeah. Look at our schedule. As you said, we still have to add Cosmos and Amazon Season 2 to it, so we'll do that eventually, and we'll update the schedule.
We will update the schedule when need be, and so, but that is our particular plan of what order we're going to review shit in.
But yeah.
I enjoyed talking about this. This is something we haven't really talked about in a while because it hasn't happened
in a while.
since Go Busters.
Yeah.
But this is something that is kind of an issue, not just with Tokusatsu, not just with entertainment media in general. Is the
Issue.
the man.
Yeah. But yeah. But that was this
If you have any
episode.
more ideas for Toku Talks, please let us know. We do enjoy these.
Yeah. It's always good to get ideas from you guys because we really didn't have one. And then, I think it was Eddie Madison who made this comment. And it's just like,
Yeah, we're running out of ideas. We're also trying to come
We're
up...
not running out of ideas, but it's always good to have user and viewer input.
We're also just busy trying to come up with new content.
Yeah.
Like Toku Pitch. We have another show that we're kind of putting in the works. I don't want to say anything about it.
Okay.
But yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.